That's sermon number 1. Sermon number 2, Gene. And then I'm going to come back, and if there's time, if not, I'll do it next Sunday and talk about you being God's apple of his eye. Go, Gene. Go, Gene. She's awesome. Give her a hand.
You know, Pastor on Friday said, I want you to talk a little bit about the class you're going to be doing, and it's actually a support group. And, you know, I told him, I said, I can't get up in front of groups. I mean, I can do groups, but that's different than standing up here in front of you. But I just want to say that God confirmed it this morning as I'm doing my devotions, and I played background music, and in the background was, "This is my story." And then I got in the car and I put on my phone on hymns, and "This is my story." So, and I told the pastor, I said, I just can't do that. I'll do it really quick, okay? And then God started giving me bullet points. You might be here till 4 o'clock, okay? So I just want to say a prayer, and after that, I'd like to go to Colossians 3:5. Dear Lord, you know that I'm nervous about this, but I know it's your story. In the end, it's always your story. And I want to give you all the glory this morning for everything. And Lord, I know that I asked for a new assignment, and I believe that you've given it to me. And Lord, I want you to just bless us, and anybody that is involved in this, that you bless us in a very, very special way, because it has to do with the soul. That's why we're here. Thank you, Lord. All right. So this says, Colossians 3:5 says, "Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature. Sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed," which is idolatry. So that's kind of why we're putting this class together. It's to really get to your soul. It's called Soul Fast, a journey to authenticity. And this gal, Cindy Trim, is the one that wrote it. This is my study guide, but it was a 40-day thing, and I did it. But I want to do 40 weeks. And so we're going to be putting together something every week. And so I want to talk a little bit first about my story, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So my story began 72 years ago. Oak Ridge was our town, but West Fur Fire Station was where I was born. So if you know that little town of West Fur, it was very familiar to us. So those first 12 years I call my formative years. And I call them my formative years because I had Christian parents. I became a automatic charter member of the Oak Ridge Nazarene Church when I was born. It just started in a little house in Oak Ridge and became something big. And that's one of the things about my parents was faithfulness, loyalty. And so we went Sundays, several meetings on Sunday, Wednesdays. If an evangelist was there, every night the evangelist spoke, even if it was 2 or 3 weeks. We also kept the evangelist at our home. I did vacation Bible school, camps, and most important, family devotions every morning. Now I want you to know, there came a problem with this church thing, potlucks. I had a joke about potlucks in the church of the Nazarene. I said, how many Nazarenes does it take to change a light bulb? 50 to bring the food, and 1 to change the light bulb. So those next few years, 12 to 18, were I would call my rebel years. I always pushed boundaries. I was the second kid of 6, and you know that second kid always tends to be the rebel. And I took that on as my role in the family. In fact, my dad said one time, if you don't straighten up, you're going to take your brothers and sisters to hell with you. Because they follow you, Gene. So I spent a lot of time asking forgiveness at the altar because I kept sinning. And God kept saying, Gene, you need to go to the altar. And I would stand there and shake until I finally went. And, but I'll tell you, everything changed at age 16 for me. That's when I began to question God and ask why. My brother Jack, he was Down syndrome, and at age 8, when I was 16, we got called home because he had died. And I remember my dad circling us up in the kitchen. My dad was crying. And he said, we're going to sing, "This circle will not be broken." That was hard. But that wasn't the only thing that happened. 2 months later, Janet became paralyzed at age 12. Again, I said, why? God, my parents, they've been faithful. Why? Why are you doing it? And about 2 weeks later, I think Jan might have still been in the hospital. My mom's father died suddenly. And it just seemed like God was just punishing us for something, and I didn't know why. I stopped going to church. In fact, I said to my dad one day, everybody got in the car, and I was in the house, and he comes in, he goes, Gene, we're going to church. I said, I'm not. He said, why? I said, there's nothing but hypocrites there. And he said, well, where should they be? But I saw him cry as he walked away. I still went off and on, but I wasn't really there. Then I went, at age 18, I went to NMC, Northwest Nazarene College. And Dad said, every kid in my household will attend 1 year of college at Northwest Nazarene College. So I knew I was going to go for 1 year. Well, God had a different plan. I met Chris, my husband, and we were just friends at first. We had a whole group that did everything that the Nazarene church said you shouldn't do. We went to the movies, we danced, we did all that stuff, you know, and it was like, that was the time when we just cut loose. And then at the end of that year, I felt different toward Chris. I felt like maybe I loved him. We talked a lot on the phone. I knew his whole life. He knew my whole life. We became such close friends, and that's why I think our marriage stayed together, is we knew each other. Yeah. He came from a Nazarene home too, born and raised in a Nazarene home. So we kind of had the same upbringing, but not quite. He didn't have the parents I had. He had one parent that was not the same at home that he was in church.
Yep.
That ruins people.
Yep.
If you're going to be a Christian, you're either going to be a Christian or you're not. You can't just be a Christian in church. So anyway, I was doing pranks all the time. I was like a prankster. Okay, so he was still kind of dating this other girl, a preacher's daughter. She got to live off campus, so he could go see her after I went to the dorm. So one night I borrowed my sister's car. I got a bunch of eggs. You know where I went, right? We're gonna egg her house. And I think she probably is right back here in this back bedroom. So we pulled into the alley and we parked. And I said to my friend, my roommate, I said, you ready? We both had our egg. I let mine go with everything, but my window wasn't down. Sometimes those pranks backfire. Anyway, so that's that's just a little highlight of how much I wanted him in my life. See, I'm willing to go and ruin the other girl's life, right? So anyway, so summer after sophomore year, Chris asked me to marry him. We were at the Space Needle because he's from Bremerton. I was up visiting him, and of course I said yes. So we put it off until after we'd finished our junior year. I think he wanted me to be more invested in college. My college was more about fun than study. And so when it was exam night, everybody's, studying like crazy for midterms or whatever. I'm out in the snow saying, come on, let's have a snowball fight, come on, So I didn't get the greatest grades, but I made it through. So at 21 to 30, well, I started to have to grow up. I'm still doing some pranks that almost got me killed a few times, because nowadays they would have gotten me killed. But they were all innocent pranks, right? But anyway, so we married, and we finished college, both of us, which was a miracle. I was hired to teach at Oak Ridge Middle School, or junior high. Well, I walked in to the teacher's lounge the first day, and I said, what are you doing here? I said, same thing as you. What? Not you. Boy, you're gonna get back everything you gave us. Because I would be teaching with a lot of my teachers. So that was interesting. I also taught my sister. I also taught my cousin. And so, it's kind of a family thing in Oak Ridge, right? Okay, well, I did send my cousin to the principal's office once for pranking. So I was hired to teach, and I loved teaching junior high. But when they went to a middle school, I had to go to second grade. And, junior high kids you can be really sarcastic with. It doesn't work real well with second grade. And they cry. But anyway, we decided to move because of my husband's job. We moved to Estacada, and we went up there to kind of help start a church. And by that time, he and I were pretty invested in church again. But that went, and it came and went with us. And so probably one of the biggest things that happened between 21 and 30 is that Justin was born. October 30th, 1976. His name was Justin Gene Gillard. My husband wanted him to be named Justin Time Gillard because he was born the eve of Halloween. Anyway, after that, I always worried about my weight. Having done potlucks and everything, and having been on diets, and I just started this diet thing, up, down, and I became an overeater. And so I started to go to Overeaters Anonymous because I wanted to stop overeating. And what I found out is that it's not about diets. Diets don't work. It's the way you live. And you learn to live in a way that helps you. And so at one point, I swore off diets forever. I still keep that word, and I'm just who I am.
Yeah, that's right.
And so this is a big one. On November 15th, 1977, my dad died at age 53 from a heart attack on a hunting trip up in the Box Canyon. That tore my heart out. That was probably my most difficult year. I think that Shandy was born 6 months after my dad died. So I was pregnant with Shandy when I was so sad. And I learned later that this sadness, the chemistry happens right here in your gut. And there she was, right there. And I always felt like it was my fault because I didn't get it together. She was born a sad girl and needing lots and lots of attention. My dad was my idol. I said, no, I'm not going to go in and see him. My husband said, you need to. You need to. You know, I went in to see him and he had a smile on his face. And all I could think is when he dropped in that trail, that he looked up to Jesus and walked away with him.
Right.
Well, I became angry at God. The next 10 years I pretended to be a Christian. Went to church, taught Sunday school, was on the board, jumped around church to church. But Shandy was born during that time. She was born in a year and a half after Justin. So we began our own business at age 20, so we moved back to Eugene to start our own business. We dedicated that business to God. We called it Energy 3. You know why? It was energy from me, it was energy from my husband, and it was energy from God.
Yeah.
And we lost that sight, and we lost that business. So the kids began to act out. I was going to OA, you know. I was one that said at first, the God thing, and then somebody said, yeah, it's a God thing. Thank goodness it was the God thing, because that's where I came to believe that I could give my life and my will over to God. Because I did the 12 steps. But the kids began to act out. Justin, he was doing the hallucinations. He went to the rave scene. He started the rave scene when he was 16, and he would leave and he would go to these rave dances. I don't know if you remember the rave scene, but he got addicted to ecstasy at that point, which was called the love drug. And he was a loving boy. He really was. The day I loved his hugs. I loved his hugs. I try to hug like him when I'm hugging. But then Shandy ran away. She became a street kid. She started living on the streets. She lived on the streets from Mother's Day when she was 15 until just about 18. I would go and I'd pick her up, and the minute I picked her up, she'd run away. And so I just kept praying for her. I just kept, in my journal, I kept saying, God, please, please. And we got a moment where she went down to live with my brother. She was only down there for about 3 months, and she got pregnant. Came home. Well, in that time, gambling became part of my life. I started to gamble as socially. And then all of a sudden, it took a hold of me. I never really knew addiction until then. I didn't know that addiction controlled your life like it controlled mine. I thought about it all the time. I was preoccupied with it. I lied, I cheated, I stole. And eventually, we lost our business because of it. I bankrupted our business of 21 years. I ran from God. I ran from my family. I ran from my friends. I didn't want anybody to know who I had become. I didn't like myself. And I knew God didn't like me either. Well, Justin was the one that got me, or Isaac was the one that actually got me back into church because I had a grandson now. I didn't want him to learn the things that I was doing. I didn't want him to even know about it. And so, but when Shandy had him, she wasn't married. She was on meth, and she was into alcohol, meth. And so her life had been taken up by all of that. And it affected her mental health. And so she was self-medicating with all of these mental problems. When you see somebody using something like that, it's usually medicating something or avoiding something.
That's right.
They're avoiding something in their life.
Yep.
So Isaac gave me a good reason to stop. I felt like I'd been cheating on Chris because I had no room for him. Gambling was my partner. It became my priority. All other priorities went out the window when I began to gamble. And I used to think gambling, that's an addiction. Yes, it messes with your mind. It gives you as much dopamine as any other kind of drug. I longed for that time to get away, to escape. I just didn't like my life. So I went into treatment for severe gambling. My husband didn't even know, had no clue. So he bought me a scratch-off ticket once, put it on my desk. I said, oh man, now I gotta come clean. You know, so I'm sitting at my desk and doing this, and knowing that the business is going down the tubes. And I walked in with that ticket and I laid it on his desk and I said, I'm a compulsive gambler. I've been cheating you. I've been stealing from the business. And he just said, we'll work through it. We'll work through it. So at 50, I've been in treatment for a year. I was diagnosed with stage 4 uterine cancer. I had a hysterectomy and a month of radiation. 2 months later, we filed for bankruptcy on our business and personally. 3 months after that, on April 4th, the 8th, 2001, Justin died from toxic levels of ecstasy. 24 years old. I love that kid. I just said, wow, what else? What else? But it was God that intervened. I wanted Justin's life to matter. God gave me a new career. Thought I was going to go back to teaching after the business closed, because that's what I wanted, right? And that wasn't what God wanted. I put in so many applications, I don't even know, 20-something, not one answer back. I looked in the paper one day and I was looking for help wanted. I go, gotta do something. And I see the agency where I am doing gambling counseling is wanting to hire an addiction counselor. You had to have a Bachelor of Arts, didn't say in what, and we would train you. Well, I went directly down, put in my application, barely made it home, the phone rang. It was my gambling counselor. She said, would you come back down here? I saw your application. We just got the helpline for Oregon Lottery. You want to work on it? I said, I'll be right down. So for 22 years, I was on that helpline. 22 years. That meant every night, every weekend. That was God. God did it. I didn't do it. God did it. He gave me a purpose. And he gave me a reason to deal with people who have addiction.
Amen.
God had it all planned. I started there on my 50th birthday. That was my first day to work there. What a gift. What a gift. I kept telling God, I don't deserve this. This is a privilege. This is a privilege. Well, of course, my work was great. Shandy was spinning out of control. She was completely out of control. Drugs, alcohol, sex. And I just kept praying. Every day I'd write in my journal, okay, God, today is the day. And she tried whatever she could find to deal with those demons that were inside. I don't know. Those demons came to her from living on those streets. And she had several suicide attempts, 2 almost fatal. They had to ping her phone to find her. And I just started praying, God, take her if she can't be happy. Just take her if she can't be happy. I'm ready. I just said, God, just please give her a purpose. I remember sitting in church on Thanksgiving. It was Thanksgiving time, and the preacher was preaching about being thankful. And he said, write down everything you're thankful for. And then I want you to write something that you want to see happen, that you truly want to see happen. So one of the things I was thankful for is that Shandy was in my life. Believe it or not, she was teaching me stuff. The other thing was, I prayed and I said, I want her to do something and be happy. Be happy. That's all I care about, her to be happy. And that was 2013. Well, she did. She went to jail in December. That was a wake-up call. We took her off of all of her psych meds. And things began to change. She found a church. She loved that church. It was small. They just hugged her in. Somewhere along the way, she felt like it was kind of like a cult. And she began to ask me, is this a cult? I said, you have to discern, Jen. You have to ask God to help you discern. And before long, she moved to Powerhouse, which was a church that she'd gone to long before. But she was very embarrassed to go back because when she had gone, she had fell to the floor, and they told her that demons came out of her, and she wouldn't go back because she was embarrassed. But she went back, and they took her in, open arms. They even took her to 2 trips to Uganda. And she became a minister, she became baptized, and then moved to Uganda 4 years ago with my encouragement. I wanted her to get her purpose. She has found her purpose. I'm telling you, she's found her purpose. It wasn't an easy go, but you know what? God is blessing me through her.
Amen.
I'm still learning. In November of 2021, I walked into Walker Church. Oh man, the Holy Spirit met me at that door. I'm not kidding. I felt it. I just was sucked in, you know, and then I couldn't get away. And just in April, I walked away from the job I loved. That was the most difficult thing I did, because I knew those women counted on me, but I couldn't be there anymore. God was telling me, you can't be here. It's not a place I want you walking into. It was like a den of evil. I don't know what you feel about being woke, but that became very woke there. I hid in my office all the time. Until one day God gave me the courage to say, no, no more. I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
I don't believe in this, and I don't want to walk into a building where they're doing this kind of thing. I don't want to be here. I kept telling God, I don't want to be here. Please give me a new assignment. Please give me a new assignment. So the place I was working, it's gotten worse since I left. But you know what? I don't identify. They say, what do you identify as? You want to know what I identify as? A child of God. Period. A child of God. Well, now I'm down to the whole reason I'm here today, because I got that new assignment, and we're gonna be starting it on October 4th. It's gonna be called Soul Fast, A Journey to Authenticity. And so, this is what I want to ask you. I want you to ask yourself, are you all God wants you to be? Am I distracted by my social media, unhealthy relationship, avoiding life by staying busy or finding ways to numb yourself? This will be a 40-week journey to heal your soul. That's what we need to do. So many things in our past stay right here. And they trigger us to do things that we don't want to be doing. But this is all about healing the soul. Yeah. So I want you to ask yourself, is it well with your soul? Right now, if you look down deep, is it well with your soul? Have you surrendered all? Thank you.